What's up everybody, welcome back. So in this video we're going to take a look at setting up our lobby menu so we can actually see which players are in the game and we can also start the game. But first I want to fix a few small things. So if we are searching for a game, when the search is done the buttons on the left side do not get enabled. So I want to take a look at that. And then the connection type button also connects to the wrong event, because if we click it we're actually starting a solo game. And there's a small thing in the game instance. So first let's dive into our multiplayer menu and let's go to the graph. So in our search for sessions event, right at the end here we have a for each loop where we set our server rows. So when the loop is done we're gonna set the text for our search game button again, and I'm gonna set it to refresh list. So we can connect this up to the completed pin of the for each loop, and after that we want to enable the menu button borders. So just hook it up to this node and that should be good. So in the same graph we have to fix the connection type button. So we copied this menu from the main menu, and when we changed the button I didn't change the actual event over here. So let's get rid of the start solo game and we're gonna drag off the game instance and call our change connection type event. And we can hook it up over here, and then all we need to do is change the text for the button as well, and we have a function for that, so we can drag it in and simply hook it up. So that's good to go as well. And now all I want to do is dive into the game instance real quick. And over here I want to set the default for the LAN connection to true, and in the change connection type I'm just going to change the output name so everything matches up again. So we're good to go. Let's start creating our lobby menu. So let's create a widget for the lobby menu. I'm simply going to duplicate my main menu and call this my lobby menu. And let's do the designer part first. So we can get rid of the input player name. We don't need that in our lobby menu, and we only need two buttons in the menu list over here. So I'm going to get rid of the multiplayer button, and then let's put this at a different position. So I'm going to anchor it to the bottom left of the screen, and then I'm going to put it at 100 minus 200. And for the size I'm going to put it at 250 110, somewhere around here, so we can get rid of one of the spacers and then everything matches up a little bit better. Let's make this a little bit smaller. So for the first button that's going to be our start game button, so let's make sure we change that. Start game, and let's update the text on here. And for the other button we're going to make it our main menu button, so we can return to the main menu, and change the text on here. And that should be good to go. Now I'm going to add a new border, so let's drag a new border onto the canvas panel. And first let's align it, so let me dive into my notes over here. So I got it anchored to the top right, that's fine. And then I'm gonna set it at 100 in 300. And for the size that's going to be 375 by 190. Oh. Okay, so 300 and then 375 190. And the alignment should be good. So let's tackle the alpha first, that's going to be 0.5. Now in here I'm going to grab myself another border, and on the border I'm going to drop some text. So this first border, let's select it and I'm going to make it black, and the alpha is going to be 0.7. Now let's copy the font from our other buttons so that also matches up. And now we want to make this border a variable, and I'm going to call this the border player name. And for the text I'm going to do the same, and that's going to be the text player name. So both of these need to be variables. So on the top right over here, enable the variable pin. And then we want to duplicate them. So we need to get a vertical box first. Otherwise we can't add more of them. So we're simply gonna right click this border we created over here, the border player name, and wrap it with a vertical box. And now we can wrap the border and duplicate it. And I'm gonna duplicate it 3 times, so we have 4 of them. And then let's select all of the borders at the same time, and I'm gonna add some padding, so that creates a little bit of space in between them, so it looks a little bit better. And for the text, I'm gonna set this to waiting for player. And let's align it in the center. So this is going to be our lobby menu for now. Let's start setting this up. First, let's set up our main menu and our start game button, and we need to do some work in our menu controller. So let's open up the menu player controller, and we're actually going to add some code in here. So open the full blueprint editor, and we're going to go to the event graph. So in here we're going to create a custom event, and it's going to be end client session. And since this is actually the first time that we're connected between a server and a client, we need to make sure that we start replicating things. So this is going to be an event that tells the clients to end their session, and the host is going to execute this. So we're going to make this a replicated event, and it's going to run on the owning client. And that means that the server has to call it. And from here we're going to drag off, and we're simply going to destroy our session. And for the player controller, we can get a reference to ourselves. And after that, we want to open the main menu. So we can simply open the main menu level. And that will also open the main menu widget. So that's our main menu map. And that's the end session event. So we can go back into our lobby menu now, and we can create the main menu button event. So let's just get rid of all of this stuff. That's from the copied menu, from the main menu. And I don't think we need the game instance for now, so let's delete the variable, and if we really need it, we're going to create it again. So for the main menu button, let's get an onClicked event in here. And we want to make sure that we check if we are the server or not, because if we are the server and we're simply going to destroy our own session without doing that for the clients, then the clients will not be able to create new sessions after that or join new sessions because their session is still running. So first of all, if we are not the server, we can simply destroy our own session because we are a client. And in this case, it doesn't matter. So we can get the player controller, hook it up over here, and then simply open the main menu level again. So that's our main menu map. And if we are the server, we are going to get our game mode. So let's right click and get game mode. So we can do this because we are the server. Clients cannot actually access the game mode. So we need to cast it to our shooter game mode. No, we actually need to cast it to our menu game mode because we are still in the menus, so that's my bad. So cast to menu game mode, and then we need to get an array of all the player controllers in here. But I don't think we actually created that, so let me check. No, we didn't. So we're gonna open our menu game mode. And all these names are confusing. So in the menu game mode, we're gonna add a variable, and that's going to be all connected players. And that's going to be an array of menu controllers. So look for the menu controller, and then in the top right, make it an array. So we're gonna get back to this later. First, let's go back to the lobby menu and finish our function over here. So we can get this array from the game menu now. So get all connected players. And we want to make sure that we do not connect ourselves first. So we're going to get a for each loop, because we are the server, so we need to make sure that we disconnect our own session the last. So we're going to get a branch in here, and we're simply going to check if the player controller in this array is not our own player controller, so not equal. And then we're going to get our player controller. Oh, really? That's easier. So hook it up like this. And if it's not our player controller, then we're going to end the session. So we can call the replicated event that we created. So end client session. And as it mentions here, it's replicated to the owning client if server, and we are the server. So this is going to tell the client to end their session. And that will automatically open their main menu. And once that's done, then we can simply destroy our own session, but we're going to add a tiny delay in here to make sure the other sessions are destroyed. So something like 0.2 should do fine, and then we can simply copy this stuff. And we're going to destroy our own session. So that should be good to go for the main menu button. And now let's do the start game button as well. So for this, we're going to go into our game instance. And in here, I'm going to create a new event to start the game. So I'm going to add it in the game instance, because we also have the create sessions in here and the start solo game. You could also do it in a game mode. Maybe it doesn't really make a lot of difference, but I'm going to add it in a game instance. So I'm going to add a custom event, and that's going to be travel to map. Travel to map. And for this event we need to get 2 inputs, and the first one is going to be the number of connected players. That's going to be an integer, and then add another input, and that's going to be the map name, and that's a string. So we're going to promote this number of connected players to a variable, so we have it stored in our game instance. And then we're going to use a server travel to a new map. So we're going to execute a server console command. Execute console command, and we need to make the command. So we're going to append 2 strings. And the first string is going to be server travel. And make sure that you add a space after this. And then in the second one, we're simply going to plug in the map name. And then we can hook this up to the execute console command and get our player controller. And that will make sure that we use server travel to start the map. So now all we need to do is call this from the lobby menu. So let's go to our lobby menu, make sure that we compile the game instance. And let me check my notes quickly. So for the start game button, let's add an on-clicked event as well. And we're going to get our game instance in here. And we need to cast it to our shooter game instance. And we also need our game mode, so get game mode. And we also need to cast it, so that's our menu game mode. So connect these together. Oh, not really sure what happened there. So we can add something like displaying a load screen in here. We're going to do that later, but for now we are simply going to travel to map. So we can drag off the game instance over here and call the travel to map function. Hook it up to this cast. So we're not actually using the game mode yet, but we're going to do it later. Oh, come on. And for the map name, we're going to make this a variable later as well when we add a level selection. But for now, we're simply going to type it in. So that's going to be our map 01. And we're going to use our game mode, by the way, because we're going to get all the connected players. So get all connected players, the array. And we're going to get the length of the array. and we can plug it in over here, and that way we know how much players are going to enter the game. So we have the start game and the main menu button set up as well. I think we're going to create some stuff in our menu controller. So let's make sure our lobby menu actually shows up when a player enters the lobby. But first we need to create an event construct in our lobby menu as well to set up some default stuff. So let's look for event construct. And first we need to create 2 arrays. So I'm going to drag in all the borders that we created for behind the player names. And we're going to make an array of them. So drag off one of them and look for make array. And add other pins, make sure you connect them up. And we're going to promote this array to a variable, and that's going to be all borders player name. Something like that. Now we need to do the same thing for the text for the player names, and if we do, we need to make sure that we enter them in the same order. So index 0 refers to the border that belongs to the text that also belongs to index 0. So does that make sense? No, I think it doesn't, but you kind of get the idea. So you just want to drag them in the same order to make sure the arrays match up. That's a better explanation probably. So we're going to drag them onto the make array node, and we're going to promote this to a variable as well, and that's going to be all text player names. So we have 2 arrays we can work with later. And now we're gonna check if we are the server, because if we are not the server, we do not want to enable the start game button. So let's make sure that we check for server. And if that's false, we're gonna change the text on the start game button as well. So we need to make this a variable, and that's not the case. So let's go into the designer, change the name over here. So that's the text start game button. And make sure that it's a variable on the top right. And now we can go into the graph and we can drag in the text and change it. So set text. And I'm gonna type please wait. And then we're gonna disable the start button. So drag in the button start game, and we're gonna set enabled to false. So that way only the host can start the game, and that's how it should be. So I think we do not need to set up anything else at this point. No, we're going to do that later. So now we're going to dive into our menu controller to make sure that we can display the lobby menu. So let's create an event in here, and that's going to be the create lobby menu event. So let me grab my notes quickly. So we're going to create a function for this, and that's going to be our UI show lobby menu. So this is going to be similar to the HUD functions that we created multiple times before. So we're going to get a isValid node. And if it's not valid, we're going to create a widget. And that's going to be our lobby menu widget. Then we can promote this to a variable. So our widget blueprint lobby menu. We need to make sure that we add it to the viewport. But if we do so, we need to hook up the actual variable and not the set node over here. And we also need to hook up the variable to the isValid node over here. And we need to make sure that we get our player controller, and that's actually a reference to ourselves in this case. And that should be good to go. Now we can go back into our event graph, and we're going to create a custom event. And that's going to be the create lobby menu event. And again, we need to make sure that this replicates to the owning client. So we're going to set it to replicate from the server to the owning client. So with this event, the server can tell the clients to display the lobby menu, and now we can simply drag in the function, and that should be good to go. Now let's also set up a begin play over here, and that's going to be pretty simple. So first we're going to check if we are a local controller, so let's add a branch in here. Is local controller, and if we are local, we're going to show the mouse cursor. That is the true, and we're going to set the input mode to UI only, and the player controller is a reference to ourselves again. So that's begin play. And now if we go to the menu game mode, then we can make sure we do something with all connected players array that we created. And to do that, we're going to add an event, and that's going to be called a handle starting new player, and that's an event that's in here by default. So this actually gets executed if a new player enters the session, and this will return a player controller. So the first thing we're going to do is get the level that we are currently in, because right now we only have our lobby set up, but maybe we can execute this game mode in something like upgrade menu or something later. So we want to make sure that we execute this logic only when we are in the lobby. So we're going to switch on a string. And with the switch on string on the right side here, we can add one array element, and that's going to be our lobby menu map. So that's simply the name of our level over here. And if we are in that level, then we're going to get the player controller and cast it to our menu player controller. So hook it up to the lobby menu map, and then we're going to add this to the array of all connected players. So drag in the array and look for add, and connect these up. So now we know how much players are in the game, and we actually have a reference to the player controllers. And from here we're going to call the create lobby menu event. So create lobby menu. So we are the game mode, and that means we are the server, so we can call the replicated event from here to tell the clients to show the lobby menu. And on a little side note, we are the server, but we can call this event ourselves as well. This will execute on the server as well if we are the server, so that will also show the lobby menu for the server. So we got that out of the way. Let's see if this is working so far. So let's go to multiplayer, host a game, where here we actually see a lobby, so that's good. Now if we go to the client and we're gonna search for a game, so the buttons get enabled again, so that's good. And we connect to the lobby. We have the button over here that's different for the host and the client, so that's good as well. So now the client should be able to go back to the main menu without something happening, and he should be able to reconnect again. So let's check our connection button, that's working as well. So let's search for the session again, connect to the session. And now let's see what happens if the host disconnects. So that works as well. It destroys the session for the client and for himself. So now the client should be able to just go in and create a new session. So we have this working. Now let's see how we can actually get the player names on the screen over here. To make sure we can actually get some names into the lobby menu, we're gonna load our player profile. So if you remembered, we used a save game to save our player profile. In there is our player name. So we can load that profile now and get the information from there. So let's go into our menu controller, and in here we're going to create an event, and it's called load saved profile. And let me quickly grab my notes in here. So Let me see. Oh, I created a new graph. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. So we're going to create a function. I'm sorry. And this is going to be load saved profile. So in here, we want to check if a save game exists. It should exist because we created it earlier, but let's just make sure. So we need to make sure that we also use the same slot name that we used before. So first let's promote this to a local variable, and that's going to be my local slot name. And now let's see what that name actually was. So we need to go into our menu controller, I think. Where did we create this? I don't even know. In the GameInstance we created it. There we go. So we have our player profile slot. So we have the check for save profile, load and save functions in here. And we need to make sure that we use the same slot name as those functions. So that is our player profile slot. So let's copy this name and paste it into the variable in our PlayerController. So if the save game exists, and it should exist, but let's just make sure that it does, and if it doesn't, we're going to create it anyway. So let's cover all the holes. So this is going to be our save game player profile, and then we can save game to slot. So drag off here, save game to slot. Again, we want to use the same slot name, so use the variable and drag it on here. And after that, we can load a game from slot and hook it up over here. Again, make sure that you use the correct slot name, and then we can promote this to a variable. No, we don't really need to do that. We're simply going to cast it to our player profile save game. And from here, we're going to get our profile, so get player profile. And we're going to store this struct on the menu controller. So simply right click and promote to variable, and that's our player profile info. And now we have the profile stored on our local menu controller. So we can get a return node here. Compile and save. So let's go back into the event graph. And we want to create another event in here. And this is going to be the initial setup event. So call it custom event initial setup. And again, this is going to be a replicated event that runs on the owning client. So run on owning client can be called from the server. And in here, we're going to drag in our load saved profile. And we're going to continue here later. So right now, the server can tell the clients to load their profile, and the client will have the profile stored on the local controller. So first, let's go into our lobby menu and create functions we need to update the player names. So we need an update and clear function. So let's create a new function over here. And the first one, let's do the update function, update player names. And we need an array as an input, and that's going to be an array of our player profiles. So player profiles. And make sure that you change it into an array. Then we can get a for each loop in here, connect it up to the array, and we can break the struct to get the actual player name. And let me see, then we can drag in the array from the border and the text. So let's do the text first and get the array. We're gonna get a copy, and if we hook the index to this index, then we can get the same index for the border, and that should match up. So over here, we're gonna set the text. And we're gonna set the text to the player name. Hook it up to the loop body. So then we're gonna get the borders in here, and we're also gonna get one of them, and we want to get the same index. And for the border, I want to change the brush color, so it's a little bit different color when there's actually a player in that slot. So I'm going to use the set brush color over here, and I'm simply going to set it to black. That's fine. So after we did this, we can get a return node and hook it up to the completed pin, and this should be good to go. Now we can do the clear player names. And in here we're simply gonna set everything back to default. So first let's get the player name text in here, and we're gonna get a for each loop again. Plug this in over here, and we're gonna set the text to waiting for player again. So let's grab the set text node, paste it over here. The array element is the target, and then this is going to be waiting for player. And then we want to set the color of the border again to a little bit alpha. So we need to drag in the border player names, and we're going to get an index from here and make sure it's the same index as the text was. And then we're going to set the brush color again. So and this time I want to bump down the alpha a little bit to 0.7. So that's the default value I used. And that's good to go as well. So we can use these functions for the player. So now we can go back into our lobby menu. To our menu controller and create a function to actually use this. So I'm going to grab my cheat sheet again, and we're going to create the update player names event. So create a custom event, update player names, and again this is going to be replicated to run on the owning client. And we're going to add an input in here, and that's an array of our player profiles. So again, player profiles, and turn it into an array. So we're gonna grab the reference to our lobby menu. Let's double check, make sure that it's valid. And then first we're gonna simply clear out all the existing player names. And then we're gonna add the new ones, so we can just call the update function and plug in the array, and the rest will be handled for us. So update player names, plug in the player profiles, and connect this up. So now all we need to do is make sure that the host is going to tell us to call this event, and the host will also plug in the correct profiles for us. So to do that, we need to go to our menu GameMode, and we're going to create an update lobby event. So in our menu GameMode, let's create a custom event, and this is going to be our update lobby event. I'm going to add a boolean in here, and this is going to be for the player names, so we can add multiple things to update later, like the level selection and things like that. So we're just going to add a branch in here and check what we want to update. We need an array of our player profiles again, so we're going to create this on our menu game mode as well. So that's the player profiles, and that's all of them. So this is going to be player profiles. And then we need to turn it into an array, but it's already, so that's good. So drag it in over here, and we're going to clear the array first. Hook this up to the true pin. And then we're going to get a for each loop in here and hook up all the connected players. So this is an array of all our menu player controllers. So from here we're going to drag off and get our player profile, and we're going to add it to the array of player profiles that we have in the game mode. So drag it in here and add to, hook this up to the loop body. So this will add each player's profile into the array, and then when that's done we are going to get another for each loop and hook it up to the completed pin, and again grab all of the connected players, and we want to get another branch in here, and we're going to hook it up to the input node again. So if we want to update the player names, then we're going to drag in our update player names event that we created on the controller a little bit earlier. And over here we can simply plug in the array from the game mode. So that should work, and now the server can tell the clients to update their lobby, but there is one thing that we need to fix, and for that we need to go into our menu controller again. So over here we loaded the profile and we stored it on the player controller, but this was the local player controller because this event executes on the owning client. And there's two player controllers for each player, one on the server and one for the client. So we need to make sure that the server's player controller also knows our player profile. So how are we going to do that? We're going to go to the event graph and we're going to create a new event, and that's going to be called server update lobby. So let's make a little bit of room in between here. Custom event server update lobby. So we're going to give this one input, and that's a single player profile. So make sure that you change it to a single variable again. And now this is an event that's going to execute on the server. So we're going to set it to replicate, run on server, and then it needs to be called from the client. So we need to make sure that the client calls this event to tell the server to update the lobby. And then the client is going to plug in his player profile, so the server can store that. So we can simply drag in a setter over here and plug it in. So this happens on the server, and now the server also knows the correct information. And we can simply get our game mode. And again, we are the server, so we can do that. So we can cast to our menu game mode, plug it in over here, and then we can call our update lobby event and make sure that we update the player names, because right now we have the correct information on the player controller that's on the server as well. So now if we go into the update lobby event, this will actually return the correct information. If we would not have added this, then this would actually be an empty result. So that's why you need to make sure that you replicate it to the server as well in this case. So let me see, now we need to make sure that we call our server update lobby event, and we're going to do this from the initial setup event. So this runs on the owning client, and from here the client can tell the server to update the lobby. And we can simply plug in the player profile over here, because right now we are client side, so on the local controller. That could also be the server, by the way, but let's not make it too complicated. So right now we load the profile on the local player controller, and then we tell the server to update the information with the local information, and that gets stored over here. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Now let's see if this is actually working. So let's launch it. And now I'm going to create a session first with one player. So that already failed. Nice. Let's see what happens if the client connects. So after I created the session, I'm going to change the name in here. And then let's see what happens if the client connects. So still nothing happens. So I'm going to check what we messed up, and I'm going to get back to you in a little bit. So that wasn't too bad. We created the initial setup event, but we need to make sure this actually gets called. So we can go back to our menu game mode again. And when a new player controller logs into the session, then we're gonna create the lobby menu and after that call the initial setup event. Oh, really? So plug it in at the end over here. And now it should work. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So multiplayer host game, the host name pops up, so that's nice. Now let's go back to the client. Let's change the name first. And let's search for the session. There we go. So the host and the client both have the correct player names on screen. So that seems to be working as well. And we already tested the main menu button, so that one worked. So now let's see if we can actually start the game as well. So I do notice we didn't change the title for the lobby menu, but it's not really big deal. I think you can handle that yourself. So I'm just gonna update the title later after the video. Now let's double check if our start game button works. So that can take a few seconds. Just make sure you click it only once and then it loads into the map. So we have the lobby set up and that's good to go. Thanks for watching everybody. Hope you enjoyed it and I hope it made a little bit of sense. You can join the GameDev Raw Discord if you like, and if you enjoyed the video please consider leaving a like. So thanks for watching, talk to you later, bye bye.